Hey guys, recently I was part of a Constitution class where Constitution coach Amanda Rettenmeyer, she shared some the misconceptions so many people have about the Constitution, our government, and our rights as Americans. I wanted her to come on today so she could share these truths with you too. Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. Hi. Thank you for having me on, Leah. I appreciate it. It's my first time being on a podcast.
Oh, wow. I'm honored.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on. I was in your Constitution class and I was just blown away by the facts that you shared about not only our Constitution, our government, the powers that be, and
hmm
just all these misconceptions that so many Americans, including me, have believed all of our lives.
hmm
We haven't been really taught the true history of America in our schools. What was it that got you so passionate to know more about the Constitution, teaching about the Constitution? And now you have a class that you teach every Tuesday night. We can share more about that later. But what was it that got you passionate about this?
hmm Well, as a little kid, I've always loved history, American history, a lot of focus on World War II and the Holocaust and everything, which I always thought was very morbid and kind of weird that that was where my focus was. But I think in the last few years, I've come to realize that the reason why is because I really feel like God has shown me that it's something that has taught me to keep my eyes on how not only how Jewish people have been treated throughout the years and how they continue to be treated, but also it has shown me the ways that the German people were manipulated by the Nazis, how propaganda was used in the media, which all of those things are things that I think from seeing the movies, reading the books, and all the studying and stuff I've done, it just helps point to seeing what has been going on in our country. Like people have said that, oh, well, this is the way our country's going to go. Our country's already been there.
Mm,
It's already taken those steps. And the problem is, though, is that we just don't recognize it because we think we're America. No one's going to, they wouldn't do that to us. We have our freedoms, we have our Constitution. But like you said, they're not teaching our history anymore. They're not teaching the Constitution to children anymore. The most classes now don't I don't believe like my children have brought like their assignments home and everything. And my daughter spent probably when she was in the I think it was 6th grade, she spent like a month and a half on doing maps. I'm like, really? Maps? I'm like, what about actual history? Are you learning anything? And I'm
right.
just these aren't the things that our kids need to know. They need to know, why did we separate from England? Why did we want to become our own nation? What were the principles that our nation's been founded on? So, with all that interest, I didn't really start digging in though, because like everyone else, I was busy with life and everything. And then 2020 happened, and all of a sudden, I had a lot of free time. But with the lockdowns and all the mandates and everything, it really started to get me curious. What are our rights? What is our nation supposed to look like? Because all I knew was it didn't feel like this was how our country's supposed to be. This isn't how it's supposed to work. And that wasn't just our country, though. That was like the whole world. But it got me very concerned about like our government's role and them overstepping and whatnot. So I really wanted to see like what's true and what's not. And one thing that I've learned for sure is that the best thing to do is when anyone tells you anything, if you see anything online, read an article, anything like that, always look into it. Find another source to check to see for yourself if it's true information. And I was talking with someone last night and I was telling them that even then, just because you find another article that might support whatever idea you've seen, the best thing that we can do is check the source that it's coming from. Is the source you're getting your stuff from? Are they a reliable source? Are they a true source? So much misleading information out there. And one of the worst things I believe about the internet, and I think why we have so many confused kids these days, is because they have so many opposing views. It's like for every article they read that says this one thing is true, they have 10 more that say it's not true. And it's so hard to find the truth. So we literally have to dig to find the actual truth of what is being said. We misunderstand our freedoms. We're not living up to our we the people, for the people, by the people, right? We are allowing our government to run all over us. It's like the passage in the Bible, my people perish for lack of knowledge, right? I know that's, of course, referring to a knowledge of God, but it's almost applicable to this as well, because it's not important just to know what your rights are. You have to know, okay, well, I know what my rights are. What do I do with them now? How do I stand up? And sometimes, it's not that you need to stand up for you specifically. Maybe, there's someone who needs you to be a voice for them and stand up and fight for them. And so that's really what kind of got me interested in this. I never thought I would do this. I never thought I would be someone standing in front of any group of people ever saying anything about the Constitution or about God, because that's also part of my class is, the faith base of our nation and everything. But I felt so compelled when I found out, because I was like, I've been lied to, and I know that other people I know have been lied to, and they don't know. And it's almost like for me, it was a responsibility of, now that I know, I have to let other people know, because what are you going to do with the truth once you have it? If I keep it to myself, it benefits nobody. It doesn't even benefit me if I keep it to myself. A friend of mine in 2021 had introduced me to Rick Green's Patriot Academy, and it's great. So that's what I'm a constitutional coach through. And I took the Constitutional Live class once, and it blew my mind just how much I didn't know. And some of the things that, I was like, wow, our government does exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to do. And that's mind blowing. And then after that, though, I took their biblical citizenship class, which I ended up taking twice because it was so good. So a lot of what I do teach is knowledge that I've gotten from them and from David Barton and his books with wall builders, because he's got amazing information. He's just like a fountain of information.
Yeah. I actually met David a couple years ago at an event. He was talking about his book, The American Story. One of the statistics that he shared, I remember when it happened, I was really posting about it and everything, that only 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview. I mean, that just really tells you a lot. That tells you all you need to know on, why we have who we have in government, the election process, all of it, right? If only 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview, how can you expect to see righteous people in government and fearless preachers behind the pulpit, right?
Yeah. So back to kind of hitting back on a crazy statistic would be that 4 out of 5 millennials don't believe that there's an absolute truth. And our government is meant to run because it is a Christian foundational government. That's how our nation was founded. There's so many letters, articles, journals that support this, no matter how much they try to deny that our founding fathers were Christians or that we had that Christian background. But the problem is that if we lose our absolute truth, if we lose our moral grounds, it all falls apart, and our Constitution can't stand if we don't have morals.
Right.
Because there's nothing to hold you into, well, this is what's right, and this is what's wrong. And that's really the problem with what we're telling people. We're telling kids, oh, your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. And no one can tell you that your truth is wrong. No one can tell you how you feel is wrong. No one can change how you feel. How you feel is how you feel. But a truth is a truth. A fact doesn't change.
Right. Well, you just think about it. Why do we have the laws that you can't murder, right? You can't rape, you can't kidnap, you can't steal. That all came from the Bible. We still hold to those laws today. I mean, it just shows you that there is moral absolute truth.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, because those are the principles that our nation was founded on. And those are what we call nature's laws, right? Because those are things that the right to live, you have a right to life. You have a right to defend your life. Those are things that came from God. Those are inalienable rights. Nobody gets to take those away from us. The government doesn't get to take away rights that they did not give us. Our rights come from God, not our government. And I think the problem is that because so many people don't believe in God right now in our nation, the conception is that government does give us our rights. So government gets to take them away from us. And that was, I think, what a lot of the pushback during the lockdowns and everything is that people realized, You don't get to tell me I can't have my freedom to go, that's our right to like go places and do things and provide for our families and work. And we were being told, no, you don't get to do that. And
Yeah,
so,
they kept strip clubs open and bars open and all these immoral places open, right? But churches had to shut down, places of worship had to shut down. I mean, it was very contradictory, you
mhm,
know?
we have different resources that, the founding fathers used to come up with our founding documents. And the most used resource from the Federalist Papers and all the way down to like our Constitution and our Bill of Rights being done, the Bible was the most used foundation for that. So that's what they quoted. That's where they got it from. They also used Blackstone's Laws, which is a great book. I actually have a copy of Commentaries on Law. But honestly, the best thing that you could read if you want to know about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is to read the actual documents themselves. One of the best things I love about the Constitutional Live course that they offer at Patriot Academy is that in the back of the book that they give you, you have, it's called The Constitution Made Easy. And it is a great tool because it has on one side, it has what the original language of the Constitution is, how our forefathers wrote it. On the other side, it gives you a great modern day translation, so if you're not understanding the language, and I think that that's a huge problem for people, is they don't understand, they get confused by the language because it's not worded how they would say it today. A lot of the laws today and everything that we go through, they are not even going back to the Constitution. They stopped using the Constitution as a reference for how the law should be. They now just use case law. So they're not even basing it off of what the Constitution said. They're basing it off of someone else's opinion of what the Constitution said.
Right. But when I was in your class, you were teaching us the main misconceptions that Americans have regarding the Constitution, government, and our American rights. Can you share with everybody watching today what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest misconceptions that is going around in our nation, and that I hear constantly, almost every day you hear it, is people think that we are a democracy, and we're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And so last night, I was asked, well, what is a democracy? What is a republic? So the difference is that a democracy is when the people make the laws. So that's you and me directly making the laws for how we live and everyone else lives, right? A good example of that would be your household is a democracy because you make the rules for everyone that lives there, and that's how, you rule it. You get to be the ruler, you get to, control the children, family, whatever happens there, it's all kind of under your control. A republic is when when the people elect representatives to represent us in government, to have our best interest in mind. And unfortunately, we're kind of working opposite. I don't think our government has that even inkling of an idea anymore. Along with the fact that people think that we are a democracy, people think that the government has the power. And that's the biggest misconception of all, because we have all the power. We have all of the power.
The government works for us. So many people don't know that because of the way they push themselves
Right.
on us, right? And
Yeah,
all
well,
the
you
laws
can
and everything. I think so many people, I didn't even know till later in life how much the government actually is supposed to be working for us.
Right. Yes. So you can see actually how it's kind of evolved because it started with, they stopped teaching it in school, right? So then you don't learn as much about the Constitution and
I didn't learn
everything.
that.
Right. And so then you don't you don't know about the Constitution. So it's not something if you're going to like necessarily go out and seek the knowledge on your own, right? And that's how we've gotten to where we are today, I think, is that
Yeah.
without them teaching it to us, we stopped seeking what it was, and we became a group of people who are just content to be like, okay, well, you're the government, you do what you have to do, I'm going to be over here living my life, not realizing that we can take the power back of what they're doing over there is controlling what we're doing over here, and we're not even thinking about that. We're just letting it happen, or we're just complaining about it.
And the government wants us to stay ignorant to this fact, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, the government doesn't want, everybody to uprise knowing that, the government works for them. Instead, they want to be codependent on the government, you know, begging for scraps when really we should be the kings and queens.
Mhm. Oh, I really think one of the biggest fears of our government right now is if we were all to realize that we don't need them. Like, we don't have to be dependent upon them. And that's what our government wants right now. They want us to
Yeah.
be dependent. They want us to have to ask for things. That particular thing about democracy and us being a republic. And even when people say we're a democratic republic, we're not, because literally the definition of democracy is people are running the government. And that's not. We have representatives who are running us. That leads into the next misconception, is that we have three equal branches of government, right? The executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And our founding fathers never intended for us to have three equal branches. They don't even have like how the court should be set up in the Constitution or anything. The whole purpose of our Supreme Court is not to make all the laws that rule over us. It is to say, is this a constitutional right being broken? If it is, we need to rule in favor of the person who's having their rights be infringed upon. Or no, it's not, it doesn't break their constitutional right. That's what they're supposed to be doing. They're not supposed to be lawmakers. It even says on their website, that on the Supreme Court's website, it says that we have three equal branches of power, and we don't. The founding fathers never intended for the courts to have that much power. The most powerful branch that we should have in our government is the legislative branch, because we get to reelect those people every 2 years. So if they're in office and they're not doing a good job, when 2 years comes around, we can say, get out of office. We don't want you there.
Right.
And they're the closest to the people. They are the ones who kind of should deal day to day with what's going on with us, because they are our elected representatives. And then we have the president, and he's the executive, and he's supposed to be the one. I'll give you the example of why it's set up this way. Because the president, if he's picking a Supreme Court justice, right? He is the one who is going to say, this is the person who I want, to be a justice. The executive's job is to choose the nominee. And then it goes to our Congress, the legislator, to vote and either confirm or ask them to deny that nominee.
Right.
Because the judicial branch is that person who got put in by Congress and the president. We do not get to choose who goes on that council at all. That's not anything we have the power to do. That's why they're supposed to be the weakest branch, because even though the president has the power to say, this is the person I want, our power comes from if the people who we put in as our representatives vote someone in who does not reflect our values or we think does unjust things, then we can say, okay, you didn't do your job, so we're putting you out of office. We want someone to come in who's going to put people into that position that will go with the values that we have. So that's one of the best examples I could come up with of how it's supposed to work with our branches. And there's a lot of limitations that our government has in place from our Constitution, from the Declaration of Independence. But the sad thing is that they don't follow it. And because we, the people, do not know what the Constitution says, we don't know what our rights are, we don't even know that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Even if we're like, hey, this doesn't seem right, like we don't know what is right.
Yeah, they want to keep us dumb and ignorant.
Yes, that's exactly what they're trying to do. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes we let them. It's just it is that ignorance thing.
Well, and there's also a lot of people that think that they need the government in order to survive, right? So they don't want to rock the boat.
Right. Yeah. I think everyone should go out and read the Constitution. And if we can't get our schools to teach it, then we at home need to start taking the responsibility to teach our children and our families, because we're not going to get it from the media. We're not going to get it. And like I said, online, you have to be careful what should you use.
Definitely not going to get it from the media.
No. So definitely that's what I'm saying. Read the Constitution, read the Declaration of Independence. And those are really, you can't have one without the other, because the Declaration, I think in the Constitutional Live class, one of the things that they say is that in business terms, the Declaration of Independence is like the Articles of an Incorporation that tells us who we are and what we're about. And then the Constitution is like the bylaws telling how the business will be run. It's great if you think about it that way, because that's exactly what do. And our Constitution addresses the grievances that our Declaration of Independence brings up. So they correlate together. You really can't separate the two. And so the second misconception is that we have three separate but equal branches of government, and that's not how it was ever supposed to be set up. And the third misconception is separation of church and state. I'm sure everyone has heard that phrase.
Oh
And
yeah, they love to throw that one out.
they do. I mean, yes, even people who don't have any faith know about separation of church and state. So this is a huge one because when it was written, it was not wrote into our Constitution. It's not a part of our Bill of Rights, and it's not a part of the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson wrote it to the Church of the Danbury Baptist in a letter trying to encourage them that the government would not infringe upon their rights of church, of being in church, expressing their faith. And that was what it was meant to do. Separation of church and state does not mean that church cannot mix with government. Christians should not be political. Christians don't get to talk about politics. Pastors can't say this is morally wrong in our government. It is supposed to be that what they didn't want was for the government to set up the one denomination for the whole nation. Like England, they didn't want to be the Church of England, basically. That's what they were coming away from. That's what they were trying to, one of the things they wanted to change and wanted freedom from. Our founding fathers never imagined that we would be anything other than a Christian nation. Most of them were people of faith. And even if they weren't the same denomination, they still all believed in God. They all believed in Jesus. And so when they put in that amendment, it's not to exclude faiths necessarily, but it wasn't like you can bring Satanism into it and everything. Like it wasn't.
What you're saying is there, even if you weren't a devout believer, devout Christian, there was still respect for the things of God. There was still respect for the Bible and the moral truth.
Yes. Yeah.
Girl, say that again for those in the back.
Yeah.
This separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. You know, they act like this is a law that we've had, and it's never was a law. All it was a letter.
It was
like,
a phrase.
Who do you know that can go write a letter right now? And that letter is like now believed throughout history. And you were even saying in your class that it's been used in the court of law how many times?
Like probably at this point over 4,000 times it's been used.
4,000 times.
It's not the original wording that's been used. So what happened is in 1946, there was a case. It was the Everson case versus Board of Education. And Hugo Black was the justice who turned the phrase, because when Jefferson had wrote the phrase, he was talking about the freedom to exercise your right of religion, a Supreme Court Justice, Hugo Black. And so he's the one who turned around the phrase, because Jefferson, when he had said it, was applying it to the right of free exercise of our faith, that the government couldn't infringe upon our right to have faith. So that was what he was saying when he said separation of church and state. He's saying the government cannot come in and touch our faith. That's what it was meant to say. And then in the decision made in the case of the Everson's case, Justice Hugo wrongly applied it to make it go with the Establishment Clause. So now churches aren't allowed to be established by the government, but that was never the intent of it.
Well, of course, they switched it to benefit them, right?
Right. And so once it got changed, though, it's never gone back. They keep throwing it out, but it is so misused. And it's really funny because at this point, that misquotation has been used more than the actual words in our Constitution for the First Amendment.
Wow.
And I think that is a great example, though, of the importance of us in our judicial system of going back to what the Constitution says and not just case law. Because if they stopped going back to just another ruling that someone else made, someone could have caught, hey, wait, that's not the original intent of the law. That's not even in there.
All right.
You can't keep your eyes closed anymore. You can't ignore it. I mean, it's literally blaringly standing in our faces that things are just a mess. Like, I just don't, I don't know how any voter out there could sit there and say, things are going great. Everything's good. I think the fourth misconception is in the First Amendment when it says freedom of religion. I think some people interpret that as to be either just freedom to worship, which is not the same as freedom of religion. That's kind of where I think they pigeonhole you into keep your faith in your four walls of your church, but don't bring it out to the public square. Or even to the point that people think of it as freedom from religion.
Mm,
And it's not, it's freedom of religion, which
right.
means that we have the right to express it. We have the right to share it. We have the right to think what we think. And we don't have to have people tell us, well, what you think is wrong. And you can't say that. After really looking into the First Amendment, I understand now way better that I know that it's not just about I have to agree with someone about what their right is. If you are a pacifist and don't want to be a part of the army,
Right.
I will support that. I will support you not having to be drafted into the army. If you don't believe in being vaccinated, I will support your right to choose to not be vaccinated. And it doesn't matter necessarily if I agree with it because it's not about that. If I'm standing up for my right, I have to stand up for my right to believe something. I also have to stand up for your right to believe something that's opposite of what I believe.
Hmm.
Our country just doesn't do that anymore. You can't have a conversation, you can't have a debate because it's cancel culture. You
Oh,
disagree
yeah.
with me, you're gone.
Right before our call, YouTube sent me an email saying that they deleted one of my videos just because Donald Trump was in it.
Really?
Yeah, and I sent them an appeal. 5 minutes later, they said, after reviewing it again, that's it.
That's crazy. And see, that goes against the freedom of speech. That's censorship of your speech, really.
Well, that's why I tell people to follow me on Rumble
Mhm.
because I can post whatever I want on there. They're not censoring or canceling anybody.
Yeah. People say that the internet, it's so easy to, argue with people and whatnot. And I think that the businesses, big media and everybody, they love it because they control it. So if they don't like what you have to say, if they don't want your opinion out there, they can just take it down like they did to you.
Yeah, and now it's getting even more extreme because Google, YouTube, Meta, Instagram, Facebook, all these different platforms are actually under the same umbrella. They're all
Hmm.
being owned by the same,
Hmm.
powers that be. So now there's things if you try to type in certain things that are Christian, Christian phrases,
Yeah.
or when the assassination attempt on a former president,
Hmm.
as soon as you start typing that into the Google search bar, it won't look it up. It's not searchable.
Hmm. I haven't tried looking it up.
They're literally trying to erase history that he was
Absolutely.
to keep people from being educated. They don't want us to find out the truth. I always say, it's a conspiracy theory until 6 months, then it's a
Yeah.
fact,
Yes.
like they love to say
Yes,
things are
I feel the same
conspiracy
way.
theories and then there's like proof of it.
Yeah.
It's undeniable.
Yeah.
I was watching my favorite news show, Flashpoint, and they recently had the guest Seth Gruber, who's coming out with the film, The 1916 Project. I think it's going to come out in October. Mind blowing truths about Margaret Sanger, how she was tied to this demonic man that was into eugenics.
Mhm.
He believed in doing things to babies. I mean, demonic. And then that man was tied to Hitler.
Ooh,
Like, you would never think that
yeah.
how it
Planned
all,
Parenthood had connections to
yeah.
the Nazis. Yeah.
And there's proof that
Mhm.
Hitler actually got the idea to terminate the Jews from that man and his book. My
That
mind was blown.
it is. It is. Once you start to uncover the truth, it's that saying, truth is stranger than fiction. Absolutely true. And part of it is because, like I said, there's so many things we're like, oh, here in America, America wouldn't do that. But the problem is that we haven't been looking at our nation through the right lenses. We've been allowing them to tell us what we think and what we see or what the truth is.
That's why you have to have the lens of faith.
Mhm.
Had to say that.
Absolutely. But again, it comes back down to we have the truth that they present to us, but then we have what's the actual truth. And I think a lot of people are actually waking up to what actual truth is and not just saying, okay, well, I'm going to turn the news on tonight and find out what's going on in the world, because that's still a narrative that someone decided to tell you. It's not, our news isn't impartial anymore. You can't just turn on the TV and watch a news program and have them just present it to you so that you can make up your mind about what's going on in the world. It's, this is what's happening in the world today because this is the only thing we're going to tell you about. It's no longer impartial. The fifth misconception that we have is that our nation wasn't founded on Christian principles. And we have, as I said before, I believe we have thousands and thousands of documents, journals from the people who wrote our founding documents that show in their own words. And if we can't trust what they said in their own words to be the truth, then I don't know where we're supposed to find the truth. But they clearly state that they had a belief in God, in the higher power, that they believed in Jesus, that they thought that it was, our duty to serve our country. And I think in our nation, we've allowed the word duty to kind of be like, well, that's what the military people do. We don't look at, it's my duty as a citizen to be informed. It's my duty as a citizen to make sure that I'm educated on who is running for office and to know, are these people that I'm putting into office, check up on them. Are they voting the way they said they were going to vote? Are they upholding the principles that they said they were going to uphold? Are they supporting the laws that they said they would uphold? And we can check those things. And so we should check those things. And I think when you go to vote, you can go to Ballotpedia, but it tells you, like, you can look up like candidates, what's their platform? What do they support and everything? And it shows you, like, they have a rating system of, are they doing what they said they were going to do? Are they sticking to the things that they said that they would fight for? Because that's what people do now. They get into office, and I think they're more concerned about getting reelected than they are about actually dealing with the issues that, people put them in office to deal with from the beginning.
Of course, they appease the people so that they can get into office, and then they go after their own power, their own finances, their own status, right? It's really about them. I believe Americans are actually waking up for the first time after the 2020 election, after how our government, fear-mongered us into getting the vaccine during COVID, all the fake news, deplatforming a former president, raiding his
The bank
mansion.
accounts being
I mean,
out.
you just name it. It's just been one hit after another. And I believe that God is using all of this exposure to wake Americans up and to prepare us for what's ahead, right?
Yes.
For me in 2020, when all the election craziness was going on and things didn't make sense, God told me in that moment, we are stepping into an exposing season. And I didn't know exactly what that meant. But then, as you know, so many things unfolded and the truth started coming out. And then he started showing me it's not just in government. I'm exposing the compromised leaders in the church. I'm exposing entertainment, like what their real goal is, right?
Yeah.
I'm exposing the education system.
Yeah.
I'm exposing the media.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So he started to show me that in every area that affects us, he's bringing this great exposure. And he's not just exposing to exposing, he's doing it because God is cleaning a house.
Yes, absolutely. He has hit all 7 mountains. Absolutely.
God is cleaning house, and it's necessary for the days ahead. And so we can no longer just be asleep and say, oh, that doesn't affect us, or I don't want to get involved, or, that's too heavy for me. I don't want to deal with it. Those days are over.
They
Because
are.
if you stay asleep, you're not going to make it. I tell Christians that you need discernment more now than ever, because if you don't have discernment in this day and age and this hour, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. There's so many people that are not here today because they did not have discernment just a few years ago. They did whatever the government told them to do. They did whatever their church told them to do without knowing God and the Bible for themselves.
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned in my Constitutional Live class from Patriot Academy was that our founding fathers had kept the Northwest Ordinance before and after we had the Constitution. They had voted it through before they created the Constitution. Constitution, and then they passed it again after we had the Constitution because they felt so strongly that it needed to be not misunderstood, like, oh, well, that was something that was only valid before the Constitution. And what it is that, well, part of what it is that it required public schools to teach religion and morality. Founding fathers knew that the heart of men were corrupt. And so that's why they wanted religion and morality taught, because they knew that knowledge on its own without a buffer of religion and morality was a dangerous thing, because there's no limit to what you can do with knowledge if you don't have morals, right?
Come
If
on.
there's no right or wrong, you can take little kids and make them change their genders. I mean, I really feel like that is a principle that we are living out today. It's absolutely heartbreaking. That's the condition that we've been in.
So that's amazing, the misconceptions. Can you list them again? The main misconceptions that people have?
Sure. Main misconceptions would be one, that we're a democracy, not a republic, and we are a constitutional republic. Second misconception is that we have three equal branches of government. We do not, or we're not supposed to have three equal branches of government. The third misconception is that our nation was not founded on Christian principles. We have more than enough documentation to disprove that. The fourth was separation of church and state. It's not in the Constitution, and they've twisted it to mean the opposite. It is not to separate our churches from our government. It's to keep our government out of our churches. That's what it's intended to be.
So it's to protect the church, not the government.
Yes. Yes. David Barton had said that the only person who's supposed to be prohibited by the First Amendment is Congress, not us.
Mhm.
And I love that quote.
Those are amazing clarifications, Amanda. We're in a critical election year, as you know. We're only 3 months out from the election. What is your sense of urgency for Americans, for Christians, for voters? What would be your urgent message to them today?
I think the most important thing that I could impart to anyone listening today would be that our vote is our voice, and our voice is our power to change our nation. That prayer is the most important tool we have to fight in the spiritual realm, but our vote is the most important right we have to fight in the natural. That's why I think it's important that we know who is running for office. I think it's so important that we stop looking at the person who is running for office and really start to look at what is their policy, what is their platform, what are they supporting? Because ultimately, we don't answer to the government, we answer to God. So we
Amen.
need to be voting for biblical principles. And if the person isn't supporting that, then that's not who we should vote for. Now, I guess that's just a Christian viewpoint. But even as a person who maybe doesn't believe in God, you still want to put someone in office who upholds the principles that you have. We can't just keep voting because, oh, well, I always vote Democrat. I always vote Republican. That's not good enough. You need to take an interest and really look into who is running. And we really need people to start engaging in the local elections, the school boards, town meetings, and everything. Those are so important because, in all honesty, those are in some ways more important than our federal government, because those are the ones that our everyday life to life is affected by what goes on in our city and what we're allowed to do in our towns.
Me personally, I've seen God move mightily when I've spoken at the school board, when I've prayed over the headquarters of the Planned Parenthood in my state. I've seen God partner with me and move mightily. The enemy wants to lie to us, mess with our mind, and plant fear in our hearts. But if you push through that, you're
Mhm.
going to watch God show up in amazing ways,
Yeah.
because he has called us to be bold, righteous, and to take our stand in this hour.
Yes, absolutely. And so we need to stop treating those as if the only elections worth voting in are the presidential election every 4 years. Those midterms are extremely important because it's in those ones that we're replacing those people who aren't doing the good job in our Congress and in the Senate. If we don't do something, we are just sitting back and allowing whatever wants to come in, come in. And so this is our power. Our vote is our power. In the 2000 election, half of the Christians were registered to vote. And of that half that was registered to vote, only half actually went to the polls. And we can't have that.
Wow.
We can't be afraid to go and vote. And it's needed. Every vote counts. Every vote counts. I know someone who ran for a local public office and did not get it, but they only lost by like 100 votes. And really, that's not that much. So if, more people would have got out there, who knows? It could have been a different result. But every vote counts. And we have to keep fighting for our nation.
I tell people, if you don't pray, if you don't vote, then don't complain. Because
Right.
people love to complain. They love to complain about government or inflation, but they're not doing anything to prevent it.
Right. If you're not happy with something in your life, if you're not happy with like your hairdresser, how they do your hair, you are not going to keep going back to the same hairdresser. You're going to be like, no, I'm going to look into finding a better hairdresser.
You
With
don't
our
say I was with that hairdresser since I was, 15 years old, so I have to
right,
stay with that hairdresser. You're saying, no, she's jacking up my hair,
right. And you say, I'm going to go find something that is going to
Yeah.
better suit my needs. And so that's what we need to do with our government. We need to treat it like it's just as important. Like, why do we just sit back and say, oh, well, if we all sat back and said, well, someone else is going to vote, so I don't need to vote, no one would vote, right?
Right.
So it's our duty, it's our responsibility to go out and vote. And if we want to see a change, it's got to start with us. And so I encourage every person to try to look at the founding documents,
Yeah.
So we should know our rights, right? Then we should be able to share our rights, teach others what their rights are so they're aware. And then we need to exercise those rights and assert those rights.
Yeah. So I know you've read a lot of books about the Constitution, about the government, about America. What would you say are your top 3 books that you recommend that we should read in order to be better informed about the truth?
Yep. Well, as I already said, the number one is your Bible is the best place to go for information about God and his word. Go to the Constitution, read the Constitution, read the Declaration of Independence. And you can find books that have like all of those documents together. And you can get them like on Amazon, you can get anywhere you can get copies of the Constitution and all of that.
Get it before it's banned. No.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, absolutely. Is Our Nation a Christian Nation? A couple of great books to read would be Christianity and the Constitution, and then also America's God and Country. And this is great. It has a lot of information about who our founding fathers were and about their faith and their contributions to our nation's founding. So that's a really great book. And then, of course, if you want to pray for the nation, there's tons of books out there about praying for the nation. One that I personally love is this one right here. It's The Power of a Praying Nation by Stormy O'Martin.
Amanda, would you close us out with one of those prayers?
Absolutely. Lord, I want to be one of your faithful people who understands who the enemy is and what the war is all about and how to do battle in the spirit. I know that we do not battle according to the flesh, but by your spirit in prayer, we can cast down everything that exalts itself against you. No name is above your name, Lord. Teach us how to pray so that our prayers become a mighty weapon against the enemy. Help us to put on the whole armor of God so that we may battle to stand against the wiles of the devil. Help me to gird my waist with your truth and to put on the breastplate of righteousness. Remind me to cover my feet with the gospel of peace, and help me to raise up the shield of faith so that I can quench the fiery darts of the wicked one. I have put on the helmet of salvation and will take up the sword of the Spirit, which is your word, Father God. Help me to pray in the Spirit with watchfulness and perseverance, that I might make intercession for all of your people, Lord. I pray that over the people in our nation and all over the world, God. I want to serve you well as a prayer warrior. Train me so that I will not fail to understand your leading. Lord, raise up your sons and daughters all across this nation to be a strong army of intercessors. Give us the strength we need to stand unshakable in the face of all that opposes us. Gift us with wisdom to make right decisions, and give us the ability to hear your instructions and the wisdom to heed it. May we be on such a constant vigil that we may be mobilized in an instant, Lord. Show us how we wage an effective campaign against the enemy to see him defeated. Please enable us to establish and be actively involved in regular corporate prayer meetings so that we can gather together and move offensively instead of merely dodging enemy fire. Teach us how to boldly advance into enemy territory in prayer and take back what has been stolen from us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
That's a good
You are feeling it.
that's a good prayer. I mean, we
I
do.
love it. Spiritual warfare prayer right there. I love it. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing these truths. I mean, the truth will set you free, sister, as you know.
Amen.
And I know you have a upcoming Constitution class on Zoom, so anybody
Mhm.
anywhere can hop on and learn more about our Constitution, the government, and our rights. Where can
Mhm.
they find you?
Actually, if you go to my website, it is ishineprayer.com. If you're interested in doing the class, you can email me at ishineprayer.info@gmail.com. So I can have your information so we can get you hooked up to Zoom. That's going to be on Tuesdays starting September 2nd, going all the way to October 29th. And it's a free course, and all you have to do is just come and be ready to learn.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for being on. It was great having you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.